we do have to talk about what is justice and justified. And justice, of course, yeah, the law is different than justice. The law is a barrier to what you can and you cannot do, but justice is the limits of what that means. So we have to decide, and that's what a judge is supposed to do in a courtroom. His job is not to decide what the law is. His job is to decide what justice is. And of course, in the courtrooms of this United States, that doesn't happen. Some are not so bad, but in terms of constitutional law, they just don't care. There are court minders, people who come and they overrule what judges say. They demand that judges do what power wants to have done. And they, in fact, just simply destroy democracy itself. Because power wants what power wants, and power gets what power wants because they have the money. And they have the money because they counterfeited it. And they created debts that we can't pay. And they created all the things that are taxation, hidden taxation, without representation, which is treason. So we have a vile and a corrupt government, which is not a government at all. It's just a simple truth that these are our employees. They are our former classmates. They're not government. The Constitution is our government. That's what it is. It's the law of the land. And that is what government is. And to incorporate what we need for society, we hire employees to obey our law and do the things that, just the business aspects of a society needs. So it can be justified that some tolerance has to be given to employees for their work because nobody is perfect. Nobody. That includes you. And the righteous do not know what the value of life is. They just make rules so they can enforce them. That's just what tyrants and rulers want. They create rules, and that way that gives them the power to make judgments. And of course, every judgment is, you're not worthy of me, or whatever it is, and so therefore I have a right to throw you away, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. That's not justified. But, justified, we have to have a law that rules us as a society. We don't need laws out in the wilderness. The wilderness is the law of the land. It will decide whether you live or die. But in society, you have to have boundaries and barriers that make it clear this is as far as you may go. Because the rest of us have needs and wants and desires and purposes for our lives and so on. And we need, the opportunity to make those decisions for ourselves. No, you don't get to be the ruler. No, you don't get to be the king. No, you don't get to play God with our lives. You have to have a reasonable, justified behavior so that everybody can have a reasonable, justified behavior, because those who get too far to one side or the other and pass by the limits of what is justified, they create war, or more correctly, they create hate, and hate is what creates war in its various forms. So we need a change that would be appropriate in this USA in particular would be that we need more justices, we need more judiciary that is specified for a trial according to what that trial will be. In other words, if you have no clue about a motor, you can't judge what a mechanic did or did not do. You have no knowledge of what you're trying to judge. You have to have a basis in the reality of the function that it is that you are being asked to judge. And of course, all judges are given the opportunity to judge anything. And that, of course, is a lie. They're not fit to judge anything. They're only fit to judge what they know. And we need to select them accordingly. and identify who does and who doesn't do a good job of that. So we need to create a whole different line of judiciary. We need to remove the idea that power, the leaders, the puppets of university can select a judge. They cannot select a judge. We cannot have people who, you cannot have judges to be elected by the electorate, by the citizens who have no idea what the judge is about. And you cannot tell by political actions, because they lie. They tell you what you want to hear, or they tell you what they think you want to hear, and accordingly you hire them or not, and they turn out to be liars. We have to have grading in the courtroom. We have to let a judge go ahead and decide, what it is that they can and will do, and if they are adequate to the needs of society and create the passage to democracy itself and peace and happiness and all of those things. If they are fair in their judgment, then they should be a judge. If they are not, we should remove them accordingly. So, and if they turn out to be corrupt and bad for society, we should punish them. But the end result is that we need to have a judge decide the case. In most cases, we need not constitutional law, but we need to let the judge decide in most cases so that it can be quick and efficient and no issues should come up. However, every single case, every single door is open, every light is on, and everything about a courtroom is going to be presented to the public openly so that we can see who is and who is not being justified in their decisions and in their attitudes and in their ways. We have to do that as a society, and we can do that with video and what have you. And if there is a cause to overlook, to re-examine this particular case, there need to be little groups of people who decide if we need to re-examine this case and so on, so that a grading level can be attained for a judge. Then we can, justify society as driven by the law that we created. So, that's true for rule law, and it's true for everybody. You should not ever consider the idea that, somebody has to be perfect. Ain't nobody going to be perfect. And that's just the truth of it. You aren't perfect either, and you don't want someone judging you as if you are perfect, because you are not perfect. So don't judge them. Judgment is a tragedy to yourself as well as others, but the law is absolutely necessary. So we have to have the correct law so that we can be fair with each other. So, and then there's, all the other things that go with society itself. And one of the things that is current and important today is global warming. There isn't any doubt, there isn't any complaint, there isn't any assuming that it's not here. It is here because of all the things that you do. Every fossil fuel gallon of gas that you burn is adding to global warming, and there's 8.2 billion of us doing it every single day. Think about that. And your baby, of course, doesn't use fossil fuel, but you heat up food for that baby, and you heat up water to wash that baby, and you have, you make decisions and drives for that baby and so on. In other words, they are affecting the climate. So we have to accept the idea that there are limits and realities of life that are important to all of us. And if we were 4 billion people again, as we were 50 years ago, these things aren't so important. But today, with over doubling the population in 50 years, these things are important, and they're not going to go away. We have to accept facts that reality has changed our lives. And global warming is one of those things. And air conditioning is one of the worst things that humanity has ever created. And I know everybody loves air conditioning, and they ain't going to let it go away and so on and so on. But the truth of the matter is that a ton of air conditioning, a small apartment a small apartment has a ton of air conditioning. And that's, 500 square feet or so. That's 12,000 BTUs. 1 ton is equal to 12,000 BTUs. So that's how much heat you have to take out. You're taking out of the building. That's a ton. 12,000 BTUs is what you're going to remove with air conditioning. So, but that requires a kilowatt of energy for the average 12-seer air conditioning unit in the average apartment. It runs for an hour at 1,000 kilowatts, 1,000 watts, which is a kilowatt. So that kilowatt actually requires 3,400 BTUs. That to remove that 12,000 BTUs, you have to create 3,400 BTUs. So and then the electricity that you use to run the air conditioner, at best, is running 30 to 40% efficient. So that adds another 2,000 or so BTUs to the 12,000 that you're removing. So to remove 12,000 BTUs for the average home per ton of air conditioning, you're actually creating per ton of air conditioning just about 6,000 BTUs, because the transportation of electricity across interstate lines and stuff on the high voltage line loses another 10%. So it's air conditioning is a major contributor to climate change. You can't it takes heat to remove heat with air conditioning. And it's practically 6 times more heat you generate and throw into the atmosphere to get your 1 ton of air conditioning. That is not justified. That is not fair to the future. That is not realistic to what we need. That cannot continue. And at the best, we should at least require that there are, at least we should require you can't air condition commercial spaces, where you can't air condition this or that or the other thing, or you have to have 10 times more insulation or something, because there's no possibility that we're going to continue as we are. And of course the world itself wants air conditioning, and they're putting air conditioning in everywhere, and they're getting to the point where they got electricity and where everybody wants the same thing, not just you and 8.2 billion people who are trying to air condition their homes and everything that they could possibly think of. Everything they could possibly think of, including rooms they'll never go into, and so on, has to change. It has to change. It's not a question it's a question of life and death for the planet. It's not what you want. It's what you have to do, even if you don't want to. And of course that goes to electric cars. Forget the idea that people are telling you how great it is for the planet. It is not great for the planet. A kilowatt of electricity requires 3,500 or 3,400 BTUs to create that, and that's before you add the efficiency lost in electrical generation, which practically doubles that. So your kilowatt of electricity that is generated, 80% of all the electricity, more than 80%, is generated by fossil fuels. More than 80%, and I think it's 87%, is generated by fossil fuels. So the idea that your electric car is so much more efficient than your gas-powered car is completely false. It's completely false. That's the facts. And of course, if you could do it with renewable energy, but of course renewable energy has its cost too. The equipment that creates all the panels for your solar power and delivers the parts and pieces for your wind generation, all that stuff, all the mining and all the things that go into creating the things that you do to to get renewable energy have a price. And then we have to get rid of that at some point. That has a price. There is no such thing as, it's all free for you. It's all whatever, the university says. It is not so. There are lots of things involved. And there are lots of consequences to the things involved. Every truth has a consequence. That's just how it is. You can't avoid that. Every truth has a consequence. And of course, the last 50 years in particular, the university has been promising no consequences for you, no consequences for us. And that is, of course, how we get into a situation where now it's extinction or we change. Think about that. Extinction or we change. And if you don't change enough, you're extinct.